let me provide some summary closure to our conversation regarding the unit we have just finished. We have just finished addressing radical curriculum. And I would like to apply some context that I feel more accurate, stating that we are approximating a definition. So we're walking towards a definition of radical curriculum, as well as the other curriculum formats that we reviewed in the last section: systematic and existentialist. For radical curriculum, I think of it as part of a continuum of different ways that educators have perceived their participation. Within radical curriculum, educators are aware that they are political actors. What I mean by that is that they are aware that their work has political implications. And by political, I mean that there is a resource that is of use and can be challenged. That resource can be material, can be information, can be symbolic. But that resource becomes political when there's a consequence to the use of that resource that can have benefits and disadvantages to people. Radical curriculum scholars and practitioners understand also that the school system, the education process, the information and experiences are never neutral. There's always an explicit or implicit consequence, effect on the lives of students as they navigate the school system. Within that understanding of schools and curriculum as factors in the reproduction of inequality, the curriculum is understood as a factor that can counter the inequality, but also work towards the production of equality. Radical curriculum has as a point of analysis the introduction of these master status categories known as race, class, and gender to make sense of the process of schooling and how it reproduces inequality, how classrooms, textbooks, teacher interactions are mediated through race, class, and gender. Radical curriculum can be characterized by an element that identifies that the work to change the system is not simply reform, but a demand for a comprehensive transformation, one that disrupts the status quo. So there's a sense of urgency and immediacy to it. And I want to highlight that sense of urgency and immediacy to change things is guided not by simply an intellectual analysis that sees the system as working to reproduce injury, but by the community itself that is being injured and is standing up to fight against the continual harm. These are just a few points that we can use to highlight radical curriculum as different from systematic and existentialist. However, this is just the beginning, so I really want to highlight that we are working towards a definition. At this point, I want to offer this question. Where do radical educators get their ideas, their beliefs and perspectives that consider schools as places that have the objective, purpose, or even capacity to produce equality? In our most recent conversation, we started addressing the application of radical curriculum. And when we take an inventory of our own experience as students, as well as our experience as educators, we can find that there is a high incidence of systematic curriculum in our recollection. If you recall, systematic curriculum is an approach to instruction that is guided by efficiency. The school may be perceived as a business, a factory, an institution run by efficient bureaucratic procedures. And what that means is that the students, teachers, staff, all of the individuals are less important when compared to the curriculum, to the content. And systematic curriculum may be observed in lessons that are written out in such a way that anyone can execute them. Sometimes we see scripts as the most obvious of approach. However, a textbook that is written in such a way that any educator can follow it, and it's reproduced from one semester to the next, from one class to the next, with the same goal that everyone learns the same thing, is an example of systematic curriculum. The existentialist curriculum differs because here the curriculum is really highlighting the individuality as preparation of the educator and the student. Existentialist curriculum is one that is not based on a subject matter as the goal, and the goal is also not aligned to produce a specific type of adult that fits accordingly to the expectations of the economic sector or the political sector or the social sector. The existentialist curriculum is not simply about asking students what they want to learn and still being committed to make them workers. The existentialist curriculum is one that is based on the belief that the purpose of this space that we are creating as educators within an existentialist philosophy is to support the human development in defiance of the expectations of the society. So we can return back to the existentialist at a future point. However, I want to compare it to radical curriculum. And at that point, we can consider the issue of where have we seen existentialist curriculum. I feel that a fair assessment is to consider systematic as the most prevalent expression, specifically among public schools. However, even private schools are committed to the systematic approach of teaching. So that's the most common. The existentialist is less available in the public school and more available in the private school sector, mainly in early childhood. And I believe the reason we see the Reggio Emilia and the Montessori schools in early childhood education, more in the early childhood, I would say preschool, elementary, and less in the upper grades such as high school, is because by high school, the demands to enter the workforce, or at least the adult sphere outside of school, places more pressure on the assessment of specific information that is compatible with the expectations of the business sector and the political sector and the social sector, and less opportunities to support the human interests, the human development. And as a third point, radical curriculum as a curriculum that is based on an assessment of intervention to disrupt inequality by actively calling out racism, classism, sexism is less available in our K-12 system. Radical curriculum feels much more open in what we call the higher ed system, the college and universities, and less available in the K-12 system. I would argue that radical curriculum is less available because it is the most disruptive. It becomes difficult to create a standardized set of content that is approved by the system if the content is analyzing the system, calling out the system as a perpetrator of inequality. Here we can extend a question that says, what does radical curriculum look like in practice? I've mentioned that systematic curriculum seems to be the most common, and All we have to do is reference our experiences as students and our most common experiences as educators. Existentialist curriculum is something that many of us have not experienced. We've experienced maybe a superficial approach where our individual interests were respected and catered. However, existentialist curriculum is comprehensive. And in order for it to be complete, there must be an opportunity to have our classrooms disrupted and guided by students. In those type of settings, we have many examples. There are many schools throughout the United States and the world that support existentialist curriculum. Existentialist curriculum is mostly available out of a context of economic opportunity and social and political safety and privilege. Radical curriculum is one that is rooted in resistance and the politics of survival, the urgency of demanding and needing a better society, a different society, a society that provides opportunities for people to succeed, not simply by having equal opportunities for people, but by creating a system that undoes the previous structures that produced the inequality in the first place. So I repeat the question, what does radical curriculum look like in practice? Hopefully we'll be able to address that question in our future conversations.